Watch the video version of this podcast at outlatewithdavid.com.
Hi, I'm David Cotton. I'm a father, a brother, a son. I'm a retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General, a former senior executive in the Department of Defense, a corporate vice president, and now a life coach. At the age 59, I told my wife, my kids, and the world, I'm gay. Join me as I talk with others who've made this coming out journey late in life to become who they really are.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
My guest today is an author, a licensed professional counselor, and a man who knows firsthand what it's like to come out later in life. At age 40, he told his wife of 18 years and his children that he is gay. What he's learned since helped him create the definitive how-to book for coming out later in life. Joining me today is William Brown, author of the book, Coming True. Welcome to Out Late with David.
Thank you so much, David. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And this book, I'll tell the listeners now, I wish it was the one that I had when I was going through this journey myself. So when someone is married for many years and they have kids and they're involved, the idea of coming out gay is just terrifying. I know it was for me. But in your book, Coming True, you create this roadmap for doing it. It's like a how-to book. What was something that you wish you had when you came out?
I think I would have liked to have known that there's a roadmap ahead of things that are going to happen. Not that everybody's journey is exactly the same, but there are a lot of similar markers, and that the process just takes time. Having some idea of where this is going to go and how it might go and how to work through it is kind of what I hope to be able to provide by writing the book.
So for you, of course, it started with your own coming out story was what kicked it all. So can you tell us how that happened?
I had, in my 30s, started experiencing some pretty severe PTSD related to sexual abuse in my childhood. And once I started to look at that and work on that and understand that, I was able to understand that a lot of the fear, shame, guilt I felt that was part of that abuse situation had nothing to do with my own natural sexual attractions. That was the beginning of me starting to recognize that my sexual identity was not indeed straight.
So when was that? How old were you?
I was about 38, 39 years old. And I went through a lot of really great therapy around that. And it kind of left me at that point thinking, well, I'm not straight. Maybe I'm bisexual. Maybe I can just make this work and I'll just keep this to myself and I won't do anything about it. And I ended up just becoming more and more depressed, more and more anxious as I started to realize, gosh, this is a thing I can't make go away. And then the second thing that happened in my life, around the same time, my oldest child started to identify as something other than straight. She was 14 years old. It took an incredible amount of courage on her end to kind of share this and talk about it. And it became really hard for me as a dad to say, wow, you're facing this and I'm not.
So you're going through this process in parallel, essentially, then?
Yes. And so kind of the pressures of those two things together led me to seek some help, start to understand what are my options, how could I do this, how do I start to talk about it? And it led me to start the disclosure process with my wife and then the subsequent changes that happened afterwards. So those were the two events that precipitated change in my story.
So when you said you started the disclosure process to your wife, as I understand from your book, she asked you questions.
She did. I was just experiencing such levels of depression and anxiety that it was clear something was wrong. By happenstance, I ended up with a therapist who had walked this path before me. And at some point, she started to look at his website and find out a few more things about him and realized that was one of the spaces that he worked on. So that led her to ask the question, is this something that's on the table? It was something I was preparing to have those conversations, but she bravely initiated it. And I had to meet her there and say, you know what, yes, this is the issue that I've been struggling with. But it began.
How did she react to that? when you...
She was scared. She was concerned, afraid, did not know where things would go. She also was amazingly understanding and wanted to give me time and space to continue to work on this. She wanted some answers. And at that moment, I wasn't even ready to say, I am gay. I just was able to say, this is the thing I'm looking at. And so she waited patiently for me to continue to work on that till the day came where I was able to say, you know what, this is the truth about me.
When did you say those 3 words, the I am gay?
I said those to her about 3 months later. And
When did you say them to yourself?
probably a couple of months before she asked the first question, that I was starting to have that language to myself, and understanding what that word meant. Because one of the things that I've noticed in the work that I do is lots of us had this definition of what being gay meant. And it meant a certain lifestyle or a certain mannerism or certain all of these things that we were like, well, I'm not like that, so I'm not gay. So I had to understand that the definition is not about all that stuff. It's simply about my internal settings for who I'm affectionately and sexually attracted to, and that's it. And so once I was able to get that definition clear for myself and understand that it would be okay, that she will be okay, our family will be okay, I was able to, start to take the steps to live it.
Once you had the conversation with her, when did you expand the bubble to then include your daughter?
It was about a month after she and I had that conversation. We kind of took that time to decide between ourselves, is this something we could make work in a marriage or not? And we both reached the conclusion that we couldn't. And once we made that decision, we decided telling the kids first was most appropriate. And then we wanted to tell our extended families very quickly. My kids were wonderful about it. They were sad. They had some questions, but, they approached it very lovingly. The fact that my wife and I sat together to tell them that they could see that there wasn't acrimony there, that, we were approaching this with loving them first, helped with that. Our extended families were a mix of reactions. My mother said all the right things about I love you no matter what, and I didn't know this was happening. And my father was not so happy about it. It took him a while to first tell me that he was not happy about it. And then it took even longer for him to kind of resolve his own fears about what was happening and reach a place where he was, in the end, very accepting and very loving. But that took time.
I've heard many stories from people, and the takeaway is don't always judge the first response someone has as their final response.
Yep.
We've had a longer time to think about it, and we just unload this on them, and now they've got to process it. So we need to give them the grace to go through whatever they need to get to their, I wouldn't say it's destination, but to where they change over time.
Yeah. And it can feel, that's so important to not put too much weight, even to positive reactions, to understand that even positive reactions, a couple months later, my mom started saying things like, are you sure? Is this just a phase? How, I'm not sure this could actually, she kind of had her own way of working through it. But those reactions evolve over time.
You said the kids felt sad. What do you think the basis of their sadness was? You?
No,
family?
I've come to understand that it was more about the divorce, about the fact that we were not going to be living in the same house together.
So when a man is weighing on the decision to come out, to his wife and family, because mostly men in your group, as I understand it, the way it is today, he thinks of all the possible repercussions and says, is it worth it? Or do I just let the clock run out and I'll just, stick it out. I'll stay with this and I'll just be who I appear to be and not do anything. And how do you advise them to look at that?
I have not worked with a single person who ever said, I so regret that I did this. Even when there have been very difficult outcomes. I've had, it's rare, but I have had some people who have lost family, whose children have written them off. And and their loss is profound. But even in those circumstances, the idea of I don't have to live in secrecy anymore. I can feel good about my integrity. The benefit of that is hard to know the magnitude of until it happens. You can tell people that you're going to feel this sense of relief and freedom that means more than anything. But until you feel it, you have a hard time really believing it. So it's letting them know that through this process, these are some of the things you can expect. These are some of the things that you're going to struggle with. But here are some of the answers, and here are some of the ways to work through them. Encourages the sense that it might be worth it. And then when they see people who, like you or me or other people who are like, we're on the side where we just live our lives now. We happen to be gay men, but that's not really the focus of our lives. We're just people living lives and having relationships. And suddenly those things at first, like, oh, I'm going to go on a gay date and I'm going to have gay sex and I'm going to have a gay this. Suddenly I don't. I just have relationships and people in my life. And, reaching that place just takes some time to break through.
More of my interview with William in just a moment. But first, I'd like to recommend his book, Coming True, Seeking Truth in Self Later in Life. I wish this book was available when I was on my own coming out journey. William plots out the journey of self-discovery and authenticity, essentially creating the manual for men who find themselves exploring their truth around their sexual identity after living outwardly as straight. In the book, he weaves insights and stories from his 10 years facilitating a men's therapy group where the participants focused on exploring and accepting their sexual identity. Again, the book is Coming True, Seeking Truth in Self Later in Life by today's guest, William Brown. For more books and online resources about coming out late in life, visit outlatewithdavid.com. Yeah, it's hard to go from the days where tears running down your face, you have a headache and you're not sleeping and your mind is obsessing to where now it's like, I'm giddy. Sometimes I'm literally giddy.
Yeah.
When I get up in the morning and laugh and say, I had a great life, loved all that I experienced. So no regrets for there, but that the dimensions I never expected to change in how I feel. But then there's a little guilt too, I must admit. In my case, a little guilt because you say, I'm feeling so good. Knowing though what I went through and what others went through with me. Yeah.
People feel more guilt and shame related to choices that ended up hurting people we loved than they do about their sexuality. They can reach peace around sexual identity more easily, but that piece of, that there are people that I loved that were hurt by some of the decisions and choices I made is something that takes some time to resolve. And unfortunately, we can't go back and change them. And many of us, as you said, wouldn't. I wouldn't change anything really, because the blessings are so big from some of those choices. But all I can do now is live my life as somebody who's going to try to be honest and forthright and transparent and not live with secrets anymore. And just by living that way, I'm changing things. And that's all I can do to really correct that in the long run. But resolving
and can be more present then. They can be more present for those in your life that are still there as well.
It is. I mean, that's the thing.
They can benefit from that.
Yeah. We don't recognize how big of a gap we built between ourselves and other people. I describe it as kind of this cushion that we built up around this secret. And it was between us and everyone we loved. And now when it's gone, all of those people have room to be closer to us and we have room to be closer to them. Again, that evolution takes a little time, but it's one of those things, until you get some perspective, you don't even realize how much of that space existed between you and the rest of the world.
You talk about that some men hold on to these faulty beliefs that hold them back. If we could maybe kind of touch on some of those faulty beliefs that you outlined, like being gay is a choice.
We hear it, and we still continue to hear it in some circles, that this is a choice. And I always say people who come out later in life are the poster children for this not being a choice, because we did try to choose. We chose to try to be straight, and it just couldn't work. So That's my, humorous way of saying this. It doesn't even make sense. But we will hold on to that in order to try to keep ourselves away from the fear and all of that stuff. There are all kinds of beliefs that the world is going to end. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be homeless. That people will reject me and I will never have connection or relationship ever again in life. There are beliefs that, as in my case, some people have had sexual abuse histories that's why this happened and it caused it and that's all it was. Mm-hmm. And it's very sad when those get conflated. And then there can be a belief that it's too late, I'm too old. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just too late for me. It's too late for everybody. Yeah. And all of those help us hold on to denial and help us avoid kind of stepping into kind of being our full selves.
The way I tell people that visit my home, they see this sitting on one of my tables and said, I didn't choose to be gay. I just got lucky. So, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Another faulty belief is same-sex attraction. It's just a phase. It'll go away.
Mm-hmm. And there, and we can find reasons to believe that it's, all guys look at each other in the shower. Of course we notice each other's bodies. It's, how do you not do that? Mm-hmm. That this is, I'm just kind of young and horny and interested in anything and this will just go away. And once I just commit to my marriage and to that this will just peter out over time. And it's simply not true. When it's something that is just naturally encoded in who we are, it's not like I'm right-handed. I can't suddenly wake up tomorrow and say, well, I'm left-handed now. It's never going to change.
That kind of leads into the next faulty belief that you had, is that one will be able to manage a same-sex attraction while pursuing a straight relationship. Mm-hmm.
And people believe that I'll be able to make this work. And that's where, sometimes married men who are closeted will find another married man who is closeted in their lives and explore this a little bit and think, well, I got this, it's fine. I'm going to be able to just scratch this itch once in a while and all will be well. But it's still an incomplete experience. It's still not being able to live where our attractions and who we love and what's meaningful to us are not in alignment. And it's the misalignment over time that becomes unbearable.
The last two really are the ones that struck me. The Armageddon factor, the fear of hopelessness, and I'm going to lose everything if I come out.
Yes. And that is noted. I started using that term, the Armageddon factor, years ago because it's so common. It's just this belief that everything will end. The world will end. I will lose everything. I will be destitute and alone and living under a bridge. And that's really the only outcome. And that our minds kind of build that story to help protect us, to try to maintain the denial of the thing we're so afraid of. And then we only look for evidence that that's true, right? We don't look around and go, oh, wait, there are other perfectly happy, functioning gay people in the world who have full, happy life. We don't even notice that.
The what else could be true question.
Exactly. But it's true to nearly everyone who's been down this road.
And for me personally, where I came out at 59, I'm now 64, I'm just too old to start over.
Yeah. Yeah. First there's this belief that, I'm just too old. No one will want me. I'm going to be alone forever. Gay people are not going to like me either because I was married and I'm going to have no community at all. And those things could not be further from the truth. And we don't have to look that far. We can look at, there are all kinds of people who, for whatever reason, find themselves single later in life, whether it's through divorce, whether it's through the death of a partner, those kinds of things. And people have been able to find new lives and new relationships and those kinds of things. But it also speaks to the idea that many people, especially men who come out later in life, have this deep sadness about what they missed. That I'm missing something. because I didn't get to have all those experiences. So I'm coming out and I'm going to be with all these people who've had all of these experiences and I didn't have them. And so I'm too far behind. I can't catch up. I'm never going to be able to have that, when in fact, many of us learned a lot of really important skills around relationship and commitment and following through and sticking through things when they're hard. In fact, we're actually more prepared oftentimes for really quality relationship than some of our peers are.
Yeah, intellectual and emotional maturity that we don't give ourselves credit for because we're stuck in the overwhelming fear of hurting others. We stop to look at ourselves to say, oh, there has been a lot I have worked through.
Yeah, I have a lot.
Regardless of my sexual orientation, I still have those skills.
Yep.
So when someone is stuck and they have that overwhelming fear of hurting someone, the need to do the right thing, how do you help them get past that hurdle to look at what the future could possibly be like if they take a moment and pause?
Well, first it's, that process of kind of what we're talking about so far, which is understanding my own story and how did I get here? Then simplifying the idea of what is my sexual identity? Making peace with what that is. And often it begins with I'm not straight. Sometimes it evolves to I'm bisexual. Sometimes that evolves to I'm gay. And, once we get solid with kind of what is our truth, then we're going to be able to sit in a place to share our truth with a little more assuredness, a little more confidence, and begin this next stage of things with what I like to call a posture of good news. Because oftentimes, people will sit down and be like, I've got this terrible thing to tell you, and I know you're going to be angry and it's horrible. And we've already told them what they're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
But if we sit down and at least internally have a posture of, this is a good thing that I've come to accept who I am and that I'm choosing to live true and authentically. And if I can hold that posture as I have these difficult conversations, my whole approach is going to change. The look in my eye is going to change. The reality of my emotions are going to change. When I know and believe that it's actually good news, that I know who I am and I'm ready to talk about it.
So when you actually are prepared to have that conscious conversation with your spouse, is there a right or wrong time or place to have that?
Yes and no. Right. Number one, not having it is the only wrong thing. That is the only thing that becomes difficult. Sometimes we can get too focused on, I got to find just the right time and just the right place. It's got to be exactly perfect. And it's another way to avoid the conversation because a perfect time doesn't exist, right? I give a lot of guidelines and suggestions about if this is a disclosure that has not been discovered by a spouse where I am initiating this conversation, things that are most important are a sense of privacy. Don't go out to a dinner at a restaurant and share this information. It's going to explode, I promise. Have time available. Be honest. Be honest with your emotions. Some people think, well, I've got to be strong while I talk about this because they're going to fall apart. But that communicates that this isn't a big deal to me. And so being really honest with the pain and how hard this is important. And then being sure to get to the essential truth about your sexual identity. Don't beat around the bush. Don't say, I feel attraction for men. Say, I'm gay. Your spouse needs to hear the words. And it's the gift we give them. Because when they have to wait for that or it's not clear, they're left not knowing what's true and holding on to some hope that isn't really fair to continue to give them around this reality. So, being honest with emotions, having privacy, getting to the truth, but not feeling a pull to have all the answers. In those conversations, it's okay to say, I don't know. I want to work on that with you. I'm not sure. Because that's often true, right? Does this mean you want to divorce and want to marry some other man? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet. So ambiguity.
after you reveal that truth, I am gay, I'm attracted to men, however you wish to frame it, how much does the receiver hearing that actually hear after those words?
It depends on the person. And this is where, every spouse is a different person. And they will bring their own sense of beliefs to the table. And some of those might get challenged on all kinds of levels. But it starts an intense roller coaster ride for them. And
should they be prepared to the person disclosing tell everything, or just
no? I think the essential truth is what's most important.
Essential truth. I like that.
And being guarded on some things, you don't have to share every detail of everything that's ever happened related to this journey. And I know that might sound cold. And there are some situations where if you feel like if I need to share this to feel like I'm being fully honest, or if there are things that your spouse is going to come to know, then tell them. Let's stop the surprises, right? Let's head those off at the pass. But the essential truth is what's most important, because it really is the thing.
As a life coach, I'm committed to help you discover the passions in your life and help you map a course to achieve the things you really want. Together, we will unwind those persistent self-doubts that are holding you back. You'll begin to see your passions more clearly and set achievable goals. Throughout your journey, I'll be there to challenge and encourage you in moving forward to discover your authentic self. For more information about my personal life coaching services, or to arrange a complimentary consultation, visit davidcottoncoaching.com.
You're listening to Out Late with David.
What have you seen in your experience and research? Couples staying together, divorcing, being in a mixed orientation marriage?
I'll start with that. A mixed orientation marriage is where we have two people who are married and one of them is straight and one of them is not. I wish I could say I've seen lots of people make that situation work really well. I have not. That does not mean it cannot. It just means I have not worked with people who have found a way to make that work in a way that flourished. More often than not, this ends in separation, sometimes divorce. It is the more common outcome, but it's not one that has to be decided the day of, right? It could take a little time to work into that decision. My wife and I, it was more than a year after disclosure when we got divorced, when our divorce became final. We took a lot of time with it. There's no prescription on how that has to work, but research is limited. Research shows that if the issue is homosexuality, marriages tend to last no longer than 3 years after disclosure. If the issue is more truly bisexuality, on average, marriages last 7 to 10 years after disclosure.
How does one begin that new chapter as a gay man, finding community, self-acceptance, and moving forward?
Yeah, it's a matter of, I call it starting with some immersion experiences, not jumping in the deep end of the pool immersion, but starting to go to places where the assumption that everyone here is gay, right? A gay bar or some event like that, where your presence is coming out. You don't have to do anything.
Gay sports league.
Yeah, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. It's just an assumption. To start to get exposure to the greater community and understand that this community is vast and wide and as varied as any other. And, sometimes for some people, it's going to a church that has, an LGBT focus, if faith was important to them. Understanding that there's a lane for everybody and what you believe that can exist with your sexual identity. And so getting as much exposure to those things as possible, getting comfortable with them. I have many clients who would, they're like, I've never been to a gay bar. I don't want to ever go to a gay bar. And they go to the gay bar for the first time and they're like, I hated it. It was as bad as I thought. It's terrible. 6 months later, they know everybody's name. The first immersion experience doesn't have to feel good, but having those, getting a broad view of what this could mean, getting in meetup groups wilderness groups, hiking groups, game playing groups, all kinds of things. It doesn't mean your whole life is going to be gay for the rest of your life with only gay people, but it is important to get some comfort and familiarity with the full range of people who are part of this community, understanding that there's a place for everyone.
So we're to that point now. We probably have some internalized homophobia that we've drug along and we haven't kicked it out of our head yet.
Yep.
How do they recognize that and deal with that?
It's number one, first, you have to recognize that there are men who came out when they were 16 years old and they're 70 years old now, and they still have a lot of internalized homophobia. It's not unique to just people who came out late. But it's whenever we start to recognize, and if we're let's say we go to a party or something, and there's a whole range of different types of gay men there. If we are offended by certain types and we want to run away from them because we're afraid that I'm going to be seen as one of them, that's internalized homophobia. You know, it's when we step into those judgments about difference that we are stepping into that, and we're becoming the thing that we feared. We feared being judged as different, and suddenly we're doing it. And so you have to monitor yourself and really challenge that.
So during this whole process, the word that's thrown around a lot is living authentically or being authentic. So what does authentic or being authentic really mean to you?
To me, it means living as who I am, no matter where I am and no matter who I'm with. I'm not keeping secrets. And one of the big things around this is around the difference between secrecy and privacy, right? Privacy is okay. We all get to have privacy. When we're choosing secrecy out of shame, that's very different. If I'm choosing to keep aspects of my life private because I want appropriate boundaries, that's perfectly okay. It's not sitting in shame, right? And so being authentic is really just trying to show up consistently as possible in all the aspects of my life so that there are different versions of me that I have to play.
I judge based on what I know of your story that coming out was a major turning point. How do you see that actually for you, and how are you navigating your life today as a gay man?
It's almost like two different lives, to be honest. I have these moments where I feel like I lived one life and now I've lived a different life, and oh my God, they're just two different people, when in fact they're not. And fortunately at this point, I've been able to integrate my previous life and my current life more fully with family and friends and those kinds of things. I've been very fortunate in that. But it really is amazing how much my world changed. I went from living my life trying to be what everybody wanted me to be, to becoming a life of being who I am, and then being able to connect with people authentically and honestly and truly as all of who I am. And there are many things about who I am that didn't change. I'm still, have the same curiosities. I have the same sense of humor. I have the same skill sets. I have a lot of those things are consistent. We don't become a brand new person. But I don't live with that embarrassment or that shame or that censoring anymore. And it's amazing the number of things that have come into my life, both professionally, relationally. I have a partner. He has his parents, and they become like new parents to me. Never saw that coming. You know what I mean? There are going to be these people in my life that I love and love me back that I had no idea would be there.
What do you wish a younger self would have known?
I think the thing that I would want them most to know is there is nothing wrong with them. They are not broken or damaged or less than. The most important thing is to seek help. Find someone to talk to about this. There are people who call me and they've held a gun in their hand the night before. They've had a noose around their neck. And there are people who are in those situations and don't call. This is heavy stuff. It's important, consequential stuff. not to be taken lightly. And so the idea when I talk about find someone, just reach out. Know that I'm not the first and I'm not going to be the last. And there is help out there. The darkest days can lead to the brightest days. And so being in that dark place sometimes is the beginning of something wonderful. If we can just reach out and ask for a little help.
William, I want to thank you very much for sharing your personal story, being vulnerable yourself, and also the experience and the insight that you gained through the years that you've hosted your own group of men who were trying to understand their sexuality. These are powerful stories. And as you and I both know, that sharing the stories will help someone else.
Yes.
Someone else will hear this and help them to the next step of finding the help that they need to understand what their journey is and what their destination could be.
And I appreciate you bet. And I appreciate certainly the work you do and bringing these stories to people. You know, again, there are often times where we step into these roles and there are going to be ways that we don't know the difference that we make. But just by having it out there in the world, it makes such a difference. And again, it makes meaning from our own stories. And it lets us know that we're still part of the world and part of the community. So I appreciate very much the chance to be here and like I said, for the work that you do.
Coming out is hard, any time in life. But the later it happens, the harder it gets. William Brown skillfully articulates the things that hold us back from becoming our authentic selves, from those faulty beliefs that life as we know it will end, to our fear of hurting others. But if there's one thing he seems sure about, if you're gay, you're gay. It's not a phase, and it's not going to change. And that the darkest days can lead to the brightest days. For the closeted gay man, isolation is our worst enemy. So seeking help can be the first step to understanding and acceptance. Sometimes you just need someone to hold your hand and show you the way. And I think that's what William Brown has done with his book, Coming True. That's it for now. Join us next time on Out Late with David.
To hear more episodes, visit outlatewithdavid.com. And to learn more about personal life coaching services, go to davidcottoncoaching.com.